Well, my friends, good morning. It's a snowy, blistery, cold, miserable day, and what better day to sit down and talk about Fyodor Dostoevsky and his novellas, Notes from Underground and The Double. So these are the first of Dostoevsky's works that I read this year. I started reading Notes from Underground while I was in Florida over the last week of December to the beginning of January, so that was nice. So I did not begin reading it in snow but in sun, but that's okay. And then I just finished The Double a couple days ago. So that's as far as I think I'm going to get with Dostoevsky in January, and then hopefully pick up one of his novels in February. But for now, I'm going to share my thoughts and a little bit of analysis of both of these novellas. I'm going to try to do this without giving away any spoilers because I know that sucks if you haven't read these yet. Forgive me if I do. I do have a bandaged thumb. I sliced it open yesterday, but thankfully I had a friend here to bandage it up for me. I'm okay. I know it looks ugly. Sorry about that. So I'm going to begin by talking about Notes from Underground. So this is one of my favorite works of Dostoevsky's. I just find the Underground Man so compelling. As disturbing as his outlook is, I feel like there's a lot that I can sympathize with. I think his outlook is probably relatable for a lot of people, even though it's very grim. And so I just have a lot of sympathy and love for the Underground Man. So Notes from Underground was published in 1864. It was, I believe, the seventh larger work that Dostoevsky published, but it's the first one I read this year, and I'm already thinking, why didn't I just start from the beginning and read his works chronologically? But I made that mistake. I read Notes from Underground in Florida, and so that's where we're starting this year. Notes from Underground really challenges the dominant ideologies of Dostoevsky's time in 19th century Russia. It challenges the idea that reason leads to progress, both in terms of society and technology, and also in terms of the moral individual. It challenges the idea that collective utopias can be created by man, and it challenges the idea that everything, including the human personality and will, can be reduced to the laws of mathematics and science and nature. There's a lot more going on, but these are just some of the main themes that I picked up on and that were validated when I did some more research. So just for a bit of a character synopsis, the Underground Man is a lonely, bitter, contemptuous man. He actually describes himself in the novel as sick, wicked, and unattractive. He calls himself a man of heightened consciousness or self-awareness, which he believes condemns him to the underground and isolates him from mainstream society. He is hyper-conscious of his own mundane existence. He has no goals, visions, or ideals, and no idea why the heck he's even on Earth, what he's doing, what any of this is for, but he's thinking about it, and he's thinking about it all the time. He's literally trapped in his brain in a way. The Underground Man recognizes the good, which he calls the beautiful and the sublime, but he refuses to take part in it. He actually acts against his own self-interest throughout the novel. And he does this simply for the sake of exercising his free will and acting against reason and the laws of nature. Now, he thinks he's acting freely, but I think he's actually not as in control of himself as he hopes. So here we have the Underground Man. He has no vision for his own life, but he also doesn't believe in the vision that society has for his life. He looks at the lives of other people and he envies them in some ways, the comfortability and the ease of their lives, but at the same time, he just sees their lives also as just meaningless, just playing a part. Yeah. Essentially, he's floating through life with no mission or purpose, but he takes a kind of perverse joy in it. Eventually, he does admit that he wishes that there was more. That's just a very brief look at the Underground Man. If you want to get the full picture of his psyche and what he's all about, you gotta read this novel for yourself. Notes from Underground is broken up into two main parts. Part one is just the Underground Man's philosophical ramblings about his life and the world around him. And then in part two, the Underground Man takes us back to when he was a 20-year-old living in St. Petersburg, and he kind of shares this memory that he has of a time when he ruined relationships with his classmates, and when he ended up getting involved with a prostitute called Liza, whom he felt some kind of compassion for, but was also really cruel to and took his own bitterness out on. I will say, this novella is a page turner. Like, you do want to keep reading, and you do want to flip from part one to part two, and it's good, it's gold. So by way of a few themes, number one, people are not always rational and they desire the freedom to act against reason. Number two, Everyone wants to have meaning in their life, though not everyone is as conscious of this desire as the underground man. The underground man calls man a creative animal, which, he says, constructs a road for himself wherever it may lead. We all want to be going somewhere, but we don't know where to go, where we should be going, how to get there, or what we're doing on our way to get there. So even though the underground man is trying to construct a road for himself, even if he doesn't want to admit it, like I said, he tries to take perverse joy and just the absurdity of it all, he is trying to construct a road for himself. But he's realizing that he is actually incapable of willing himself to a happy, meaningful future because he's his own worst enemy. He keeps acting against his own best interest. He's self-destructive. The underground man admits that surviving is not our sole purpose for existing. If our only aim in life is to find shelter from the rain, then it doesn't matter whether we do that in a hen house or a mansion. This is the analogy he uses. But, he says, such is not so we may as well live in a mansion. On page 33, he says, I won't say I'm full when I'm hungry. In other words, I won't be content with the hen house when there is something better. I won't be content of this life of acting and reasoning and exercising my free will and whatever. I won't be content with an ordinary, unconscious life when there is something better. And he seems to think that the better life is his life of heightened consciousness, heightened self-awareness, which is also a life of intense suffering. He seems to see benefit in suffering, virtue in suffering. And again, suffering tied to free will. His own suffering, like he suffers from ill health and he refuses to go to the doctor. There he is again, acting against his own self-interest. But he does so because he takes a perverse pleasure in his suffering and the fact that this body thing he's in feels something. I'm going to speak a little bit more on this later. For now, the third theme is escapism. Escapism is a fuzzy area that I can kind of relate to, but I also feel like is not the answer to life's problems. It's just to shut yourself off from the world because it doesn't fix the underlying problem. The way that the underground man does this is through books. He says on page 111, I was so used to thinking and imagining things as they happened in books and picturing everything in the world as I myself had previously created it in dreams. Later he says, I longed for peace. I longed to be left alone in the underground. I had become unused to real life and it crushed me. He goes on to say, we have reached the point where we see real life as a burden, almost as servitude, and we are all agreed among ourselves that it is better to live within books. We are all born for the underground. And so here we have this escapism where I'm going to read books, I'm going to be in my own mind, away from the world, and this is a superior place somehow. Somehow this is better than real life. And again, there's something here where I'm kind of like, yeah, but. We'll get to that again. Finally, to just kind of give that last little edge of superiority, the underground man says, strictly speaking, as far as I'm concerned, I've merely carried to extremes in my life, things that you've never had the courage to even take halfway, and what's more, you've interrupted your cowardice as common sense and found comfort in deceiving yourselves. So perhaps I will prove to be more alive than you. In other words, all you who live above ground in this real world, in society with other people, you guys are missing something that I have. And again, I think that's true, but I also think that the underground man is missing many, many things that those above ground have. And so I think there shouldn't be this dichotomy of underground, above ground. I think there needs to be some middle space where we can live in and have truly meaningful and conscious lives. And so my question for the underground man is this. Is it really courageous to conclude that life is absurd and to choose to behave absurdly because of it? Is it courageous to give into despair, to accept meaninglessness, to go underground and hide away from the world and just wallow in self-pity and take perverse pleasure in being miserable? Or is it more courageous to live in the world as it is and to look for the meaning that you so desperately crave? Now, I believe that there is intrinsic meaning in the universe and in each and every one of our lives, which comes from God who has created and ordered them. This knowledge and the peace that comes with it is what the underground man is missing. While he experienced temporary relief by hiding away from the world in his underground and making fun of the world to justify himself, I actually don't think that the underground man came out more alive, as he said he would, than his audience. I do think that the Underground Man is ahead of society in some ways, in that, at least he's really contemplating things. At least he's thinking about meaning and purpose in existence. That's a good thing. That's a good thing to ask. Who am I? What am I doing here? What does all of this mean? That's a really good thing, and I hope that all of us are asking that question. But the Underground Man has not come to a hopeful or, in my opinion, a correct conclusion about it, and so he's still lost in his misery, and I do think that there is a way out of that. He is not yet alive, but hopefully he comes out alive. I think when we continue to read Dostoevsky's work, especially the brothers Karamazov, we're going to see that Dostoevsky does come to a conclusion that could be applied to the Underground Man and could kind of lift him out of his meaninglessness. I don't know about you guys, but I'm really loving this angle in terms of lighting, so I think I'm going to stay here while I talk about The Double, which is the second novella of Dostoevsky's that I read this January. And I will say I had a much harder time with this one. I just was less into it. I really had to force myself to keep going. There was just something about the plot that it was hard to follow, and it was a challenge, and challenges are good, but it was a difficult read for me. So The Double follows Mr. Golyadkin, who is a civil servant in St. Petersburg. He's very pleased with himself. He thinks he's a moral and upright person. He likes to treat himself to luxuries like a carriage to ride around town in, even though he can't really afford it. He's easily offended. He thinks everyone is out to get him. He believes he has enemies, even though there's no real reason for him to have enemies. Interestingly, he thinks he knows better than his doctor. He goes to the doctor, and his doctor prescribes a more social, active, healthy lifestyle for him, and he's just kind of like, nah, I'm good. I'm good being fairly isolated and kind of stuck in my own patterns of thinking and doing. Anyways, life is going pretty well for Mr. Golyadkin until he goes to this party for a young lady, and he makes a fool of himself there, and he flees, and he feels like he's ruined, and then he's out on the streets late at night, and he sees his double, his doppelganger, a man that is literally him. Looks exactly like him, sounds exactly like him. So this double kind of keeps showing up in his life. It shows up in his room. And at first, Mr. Golyadkin and his double are friends, but then it becomes clear that his double is actually conspiring against him. They're not friends, they're enemies. This is the guy who is coming to get him, as he feared. He calls his double Golyadkin Jr., and he, the real Golyadkin, is Golyadkin Sr. So the rest of the novel kind of follows Golyadkin Sr.'s mental breakdown as he confronts his double and deals with his double's presence in his life. And ultimately, Golyadkin ends up destroying himself and going mad. Anyways, this novel is hugely psychological, as most of Dostoevsky's works are, but maybe the level of psychology going on here is just something that I was not able to comprehend easily because I've never studied psychology. I am a history major, and so I was a little bit confused sometimes. Anyways, though the novel itself was a little bit mad, just like Mr. Golyadkin, I think that actually speaks to Dostoevsky's skill as a writer. He's really getting into Golyadkin's head, and the storyline follows that madness, and that's okay. I think the point of this novella is that it's unclear who the double really is. Sometimes it seems like the double is purely in Golyadkin Sr.'s imagination. Sometimes it's his reflection in the mirror. Sometimes it's like just an independent mortal out there doing his thing. Sometimes he's kind of Golyadkin Sr.'s aggressive fantasies, the way he wishes he was, or the way he fears he is. And in the end, it's not really clear. Is the double, is Golyadkin Jr. actually Golyadkin Sr.? Are they the same person? Are they two independent beings? I did not really know the answer to that question by the end of the book. I'm leaning toward yes, the double and Golyadkin are one and the same, and he thinks he's watching somebody else destroy his life, but it's actually himself destroying his life, and he just refuses to see it, or he can't see it. I don't know. So what I'm asking you guys is, if you have read this novel and you have a better take on it than me, please share. Please share if you have different thoughts on Notes from Underground. I'm sure that I've missed a lot in terms of my analysis of both of these books, and I'm sure I will reread them in the future to try to understand them better. But for now, I've read them in January. These are my broad thoughts, and please let me know your thoughts. I'm really curious what your takeaways are. I'm really curious if I've totally misread something or if I'm on the right track or what you guys think. So please let me know in the comments. I love getting comments and I try my very best to respond to each and every one of them. I also started a Goodreads discussion forum called The Year of Dostoevsky 2024 that you can join and we can talk about it. So yeah, guys, thanks for watching. I'm really happy with what I've read from Dostoevsky so far this year, and I'm looking forward to picking up another novel of his in February. I think I'm going to go with Crime and Punishment, so if you're trying to follow along with me, Crime and Punishment is February's book. Let's do it. I love that this is an opportunity for us to discuss and learn together. This is not me as an authority telling you guys what's up with these books, because I know no more than you do. I'm learning too, and it's fun to learn together and to challenge each other and to grow in our understanding together. So all that to say, keep liking and subscribing and commenting, and let's tackle Dostoevsky this year together. Oh, one more thing is that I did order Dostoevsky's biography by Joseph Frank, which has been unavailable on Amazon for a while, but was available again, so I ordered the paperback copy, and so I'm hoping to read that alongside of his works. I know some of you are doing that already, and I think that's just a great way to really understand, okay, what time in his life was he writing this, and how is that affecting what he's writing, and how is that speaking to what's going on in Russia? You know what I mean. You get it. You guys are smart. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you guys soon.